Good morning, everyone. I hope you're joining me this morning for Virtual Birding Live. If you are, please give me a little shout out. Say hello. Are there any birds you're hearing or seeing this morning? Let me know that too. I hope you're having a great morning. Today is Wednesday, October 6th, 2021, and we're here for Virtual Birding Live. I'm going to wait a little bit to see if we have some people join us. Today's live will focus a little bit on migration. It's prime migration time. In the North Country here where I live, many of the birds have proceeded on their way south already. They started in September and they're moving and moving. If you're here, please let me know. Give me a little hello, good morning. I'm going to adjust this a little bit so you're not seeing quite so much on my window. There we go. How's everybody doing this morning? Give me a shout out. Tell me how you are. It's nice and sunny here this morning. Skies are clear. I've heard geese going over already this morning. I live in a small city which is surrounded by farms and wetlands and a big river going right through the city. So the geese have been going over my house every morning, migrating from the river to the farm fields and back. Many of the geese here who are not more resident geese are gone, have flown, and are now making their way wetland by wetland to areas south where there will be more steady food and water and safety available. So I guess I'll get started this morning. I hope you guys will join in. If you do join in, please give me a shout out. Let me know you're here. I wanted to talk a little bit about some observations that people on the birding groups I'm on Facebook and other places are saying. Where are the birds? Where'd they go? They were all at my feeder for a long time and now they're gone. We talked a little bit last month about what birds go through during their life cycle. When the birds, our migratory birds, come north, they pair off, they have young. In the first flush, they'll be gathering energy to breed. So they'll be at the bird feeders, whether they're traveling through or starting to breed in your area, you'll see them at your feeders. And they'll kind of disappear for a little bit. And that's primarily because they're raising young. They're starting to build nests. They're going to lay eggs. Hi, Shelly. Once those eggs are out, they're nesting, they're incubating those. Then the young hatch, they have to start feeding them. So they're busy and they're not coming to your feeder as much during the times when they're nesting. They're also shifting, most birds are shifting their foraging habits. Their diet is different. When they're raising young, they're shifting more to protein. So they're catching more insects, they're feeding their young insects, and so they're not coming to seed feeders as much because they're hunting those other things to give to their young. So their diet is kind of shifting back and forth between seed and protein as they raise a brood, fuel up again, raise another brood, fuel up again, maybe raise a third brood if it's a really great year. So those songbirds are doing that. Then after they finish raising those young and the young are fledged, their last brood is fledged, they've taken a beating all summer because they've been going in and out of foliage, dodging prey. They've been going in and out of nest boxes. Their feathers are really beat up. And so after that last fledge of young, usually most songbirds go into a molting period. And during that molting period, they don't lose their feathers all at once. They'll lose feathers here and there, but they're not as proficient at flying. They have to be a little bit more careful to stay clear of predators. And so they're going to kind of stay quiet, kind of rest a little bit. They may not be at your feeders as much. Sometimes they don't go to feeders at all until the new feathers are in. So during that, about 3 weeks after the last fledging, 3 weeks to a month, they're growing new feathers and they're not as visible or as loud as we're used to seeing them. So they may disappear from your feeders while they're molting. And then once they have those feathers grown in, they're getting ready for migration. So they will come back to your feeders. They're start to fuel up for the movement south. So that's what's happening with birds. And right now they've moved through that molting period, August, September. They've started to fuel up, and many of them have started to fly south. So you're seeing fewer varieties of birds. Those birds that'll hang around during the wintertime will still be coming to your feeders, and you'll still see them around, but you'll see fewer types of birds because a lot of those birds have flown south, have started to move and migrate to their winter ranges. So that's the explanation for some of that. Also, during the fall, after they have fledged their last brood, often at that time there's a lot of wild food available because a lot of things come into seed, like sunflowers and late grasses and all sorts of wild vegetation. And so they also have a lot of food out there readily available in the wild, so they're also eating that. So they're not as prone to being dependent on feeders for seed. So all those reasons, molting, wild food sources, and then migration, is why you're seeing fewer types of birds and fewer numbers of birds at your feeders. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about some really cool things that we can use to track migration. For a long time, ornithologists had used, and they still do, use netting and bird banding to track individual birds. So you might overnight put a mist net up, capture birds. When they're in the net, you hold them, put a band around their leg, and let them go. And there's all sorts of different colors and different patterns and numbers and things on bird bands to allow us to track individual birds. So if they're sighted at a different location, a bird observer can report that bird band, and we have an idea of where that bird has traveled and when it's been seen at different places. That may not be very comprehensive as far as where the bird has gone or what the behavior of that bird has been in between sightings. And so over the last 20 years or more, scientists have been trying to develop different ways of learning more about migration. And one of those things is radar tracking. And since the 1940s, when we started using radar for weather prediction, they noticed that there were other anomalies on the radar that they couldn't really explain. And some of those things came to be realized as birds, large groups of birds moving around, primarily during migration, but also local movement of large flocks of birds as well. And being able to use radar to identify these events has been really helpful because it can do a whole lot of things. It can help us better understand migration behavior and understand when it happens, how it happens, where they're going, how fast it happens, what kinds of weather events different movements are associated with. I mean, are birds going to land and stay on the ground while a weather event moves through? How are birds shifted during, say, a hurricane coming up the coast? Those kinds of things. We can start to understand when birds move in mass, what's happening. And those kinds of understandings can help us make better decisions on the ground about how to conserve different areas for the best impact for birds, how to mitigate some of the hazards and the dangers that birds face along the way during migration so that there's less of an impact on their populations, and figuring out whether the variation in migration and timing and pathways, whether they're responding to climate change or other factors, whether those things are linked, and figuring out what other things we can do to determine whether those kinds of hazards have an impact on population sizes and what we can do to lessen that impact. So all those things can come just from watching birds on radar. So there's a lot, and on the ground, I'll tell you, and on the ground. A lot of the radar information is also backed up by observations by citizen scientists and scientists on the ground, using mist netting and banding, using just straight observation of songs, at night, and visual and song data during the day. There's a laboratory you may have heard of before called the Cornell Lab of Ornithology in Ithaca, New York. And forever, they've been studying birds, everything about birds. And one of the things that have come out of their activity is an application called eBird. I'll put the link for anything I mention here in the comments, so you can come back and get those later. But eBird.org is a place where you can sign up for a free account. You can report what you see when you see it. It's also a way to keep your own checklists, your bird checklists online. You can go back and revisit those, and you can also track your birding by distance. So you can start on one end of a trail and record the species that you see or hear along the way, and know how long you went and where those birds were heard, all of those things. So it's kind of starting to coordinate observation with habitat, with areas where different birds are seen, how frequently they're seen. So citizen science and citizen observation has been very important in corroborating some of the radar data. So when you so combining those two things can be really, really helpful in terms of better understanding migration, better understanding what we can do to help birds out, because they're such an important part of our ecology and the health of our planet. Sorry, my dog is whining because there's something outside that he is really interested in. So bear with me on that. Have any of you been paying attention, heard anything particular at night while birds are moving? Hi Amos, hi Paula. I'm so glad to have you guys with me this morning. I hope you're having a good morning. I hope it's sunny where you are. It finally is here where I am. It's been rainy for a couple days and kind of dreary. So we're just talking about migration, about all the different things about migration, and some of the mitigation things that we can do is on high intensity migration nights, especially if we live somewhere where we have a high building, like in cities like New York City or Toronto or Pittsburgh or any of those, is to inform building managers about there's going to be a high intensity of migration, and it may be that the cloud levels are low, so birds have trouble navigating and they get confused. So maybe we need to turn lights off in the upper levels of our buildings. I don't know if anybody saw the article from Audubon, but there was a pretty large mortality event of songbirds in September in New York City because the weather conditions and the lighting combined to confuse those birds, and they flew lower and had bird collisions with buildings, and there was quite a bit of mortality. So taking steps to understand, yeah, tonight's going to be high, let's turn our lights off, let's do these things, maybe better when we're replacing our street lighting, use lighting that directs light down where we need it and not into the air where birds will be confused, things like that. Also, it lets us understand where those big migration pathways are, so that when the birds are migrating through, we know what areas of land and what habitats are most important for them, so that we can take steps to conserve those particular areas. Also, we might want to not put other things in their way, like large windmills right in the middle of a path of migration. So all those things, all that information about migration and about birds is helpful to us to lessen our impact on their populations. Hi Mary, good morning. So that's my spiel this morning for migration. I mentioned eBird. eBird.org, again, is run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's a citizen science platform where you can keep track of your birding checklists. You can contribute to different projects in specific places that are asking people to bird there and report birds. And you can also track your distance birding. You can contribute to the general knowledge of birds. And this is a worldwide database, so people all over the world. So you can also look and see if there are places that you're going to be traveling to. You can look those places up and see what birds are being seen, and then you can go and bird there and look for those species. It's really kind of cool. So eBird.org. For migration forecasting, BirdCast.info is the site. They are using radar, weather radar, to look at different types of radar images that tell us where birds and sometimes insects are migrating to, are moving to. It might also help us, anticipate high risk of airplane and bird collision, so you can direct air flight away from large bird flocks, which may impact the operation of airplanes. So all sorts of things that we can benefit from. So birdcast.info is a site that that forecasts migration for any given night. So let me see if I can bring this up, and I will show you my screen here. I'm not sure of the starting date. They go through November 15th. I'm predicting migration for each night. And tonight, this is the forecast. Let me move you around. So bear with me. Get a little shaky. There we go. I'm going to flip the camera around and show you my computer screen. So here is this. Oh, I can't turn my phone. Hold on. Okay. So here, along with a lot of reflection, I'm sorry, is the forecast map for tonight, night of October 6th, 2021. There are 192 million birds predicted to be moving. And on the right-hand side, you can see the legend here that shows you that we go from low to none up to high intensity of bird populations. And it also shows what precipitation is anticipated. So you can see those gray areas and the white lines. That means rain and moderate rain. And the different shades of yellow to purple to orange are all different intensities of movement. And you can see that a lot of movement is predicted along the coast, along the Maine coast down through Cape Cod. And then higher in the southeast, where birds will be moving primarily south. And in some of the predictive models, they also give you arrows, so you can determine what direction the birds are generally moving in. You can see there's pretty much low predictability, except up on the Washington, Oregon coast up there, little movement up there. Pretty much low migration activity predicted for much of the western and central U.S. And then on the eastern side, a little bit in the Midwest, southeast, and northeast. Isn't that cool? I think it's so cool. And then they also have, you can also see, let me see if I can bring these up. Where's my little thing? There it is. Below this, they have other maps that predict the next couple of nights. So the middle one, okay, so that's October 6th, October 7th. You can see the colors change a little bit from day to day. And October 8th. So based on past observation and radar imaging, they're predicting what kind of bird movement is going to happen over tonight, tomorrow night, and Friday night. And that is birdcast.info. And there's all types of information on this site about how they do what they do, how it developed, what they have worked on over time to come to this point. And you can see that Colorado State University and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology are producing these forecasts right now. So it also, when you go into the more detailed forecasting, they will give you also hours of when the migration happens. So, and you can watch different migration maps for different nights and see how the birds have been moving. I don't know if I can find one for you here. Let's see. Migration tools. This talks about the radar and how they predict. They also have live migration maps. This is showing active radar. The green dots are where the radar is in operation. Red dots are inactive radar. And then there's a line that will go across telling you when sunset and sunrise happen. So you can see what time the birds are moving. You can see that little arrow in there noting direction of migration. So those along the Texas coast and Louisiana coast are primarily moving south over the Gulf. Those moving from the Great Lakes in that little patch are moving southwest. So you can see these. That green line is sunrise. So as sunrise happens, it moves across the United States. You see that arrow and low migration activity over Southern California and then moving south. So using active radar to tell you where the birds are and what direction they're moving, and you can select a date for this. This is yesterday, October 5th. Up above it shows the date. You can select a date, so let me select a date. Let's go back to September 28th. September 28th, there was more migration going over the Great Lakes, going south and southwest. There was some movement in the southeast over Georgia and, what is that? Georgia and Florida. A little bit in Texas, some in Southern California, a little bit more northerly, so they hadn't made their way south as much. So you can go from date to date to see what the migration traffic rate was on current or past dates. It'll give you a menu. I'll do a down arrow, and you can go all the way back to on this. August, July. Way back. You can go way back on these records. As I'm going through, you can see. You can go through the whole year. So those are things that you can see as well. I'm going to click their Science to Action. They talk a little bit about things that we can do to help in migration, doing lights out action alerts. Texas has a Lights Out Texas. They have business commitments. They work with partners in cities to have lights out nights on high intensity nights so that we are lessening the chance of bird collision with big buildings. Now, another cool thing that's happening, and this is through radio telemetry, is a program to, excuse my mishandling of my phone there, is a program called MOTUS, M-O-T-U-S. It's a wildlife tracking system. And these scientists are using radio telemetry to start to document not just bird migration, but also mammal migration and insect migration closer to the ground. And so they're putting radio telemetry towers in different areas where they think there may be a lot of movement of animals during different seasons, and they're tracking those. It's called MOTUS, M-O-T-U-S, Wildlife Tracking System. And right now, Tuck Hill Tomorrow is really happy to be able to connect those people, those scientists, with landowners who may have land open for tracking and might be in a good spot to do that. So we now have two conservation landowners, two landowners who have protected their property with Tuck Hill Tomorrow Land Trust. permanently via conservation easement, and they have MOTUS towers on their properties, and MOTUS is using those towers to use radio telemetry to determine what kinds of animals are moving, when they're moving, what direction they're moving on those properties, and gathering more information about how different kinds of animals move around, how they use our conservation lands, and whether we're doing good management for them, not good management for them, or the things we could improve on. So all sorts of applications for this kind of migration information. So I want to encourage you to investigate those and learn more about it, and learn more about how animals move over and under and around us, and how we might realize our connection, our part of that whole ecology, and what we can do to be a more responsible member of that, so that we can all live together in harmony. Isn't that great? Hi everybody. Hi Tim and Debbie and Peter and Denise and Chan and Tim. I'm so glad you're all here with me this morning. Please tell me, are you hearing birds, seeing birds moving through your area? Have they left? Are they moving through? I know Central New York and Albany area. Sorry about my dog. Hold on just a second. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. I know a lot of people in Central New York, Albany area, Hudson Valley are getting more birds influxing as they move south, and those birds were north up here where we were seeing them, and we're not seeing them anymore. So as they move south, we're getting more reports of people seeing them moving through. Has anybody seen any? I mentioned earlier that I was hearing geese in the morning. One morning they actually woke me up. They were so loud. Going over early morning. Well, I hope you are. I hope you're able to maybe get out after dark. Maybe if you're up late at night and you're not sleeping and you want to do a little listening for birds, go outside and take a gander up at the sky and use your ears and see if you can hear anybody moving around. Take a look at the forecast on birdcast.info and see if it's going to be a high intensity night. You can kind of fine tune your observations, and go ahead and as you're birding, do report your bird lists to ebird.org and contribute to the science there. I encourage you all to do that. So I hope you all have a great day. Enjoy your day. See some birds, listen to some birds, read about birds. Have a great bird day. And I will be back at 5 o'clock again to talk about some of the same topics. And if you have observations and you want to come back and tell us about those at 5 o'clock, that'd be great. So do that, and I will see you again at 5, or on the first Wednesday of November, we'll be back at 10. Many geese. Oh yeah, over Lowville this morning, I bet. A lot of them are migrating, landing in the fields, feeding, roosting during the evening, and then off they go, heading south. And it's amazing, isn't it, Mary? So many geese moving and moving. Awesome. Anybody else? I guess not. We're not seeing any comments. So I'm going to head off for my day. Hope y'all have a good one. We'll either see you back at 5 or next month. And happy birding. Bye-bye.